My truck gave one last pitiful cough before the engine died completely. The dash lights flickered out, leaving me stranded on a nearly empty stretch of Texas back road with nothing but a sinking feeling and the smell of overheated metal drifting through the cracked window. I coasted to the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires, and sat there for a moment with both hands gripping the steering wheel like I could will the thing back to life. It didn't listen. The sun was already sliding toward the horizon, a sliver of orange burning behind low hills, and the silence felt enormous, like I'd somehow fallen out of the world. I stepped out, cursed softly under my breath, and kicked at a small rock that did absolutely nothing to deserve it. My phone had a sliver of signal, not enough to load a map, definitely not enough to call for help. The nearest town was miles behind me. The next was even farther ahead. I leaned against the truck door, exhaling into the empty landscape. It was just me, the wind, and the unsettling worry of spending the night out here. Then, faintly at first, I heard something else. A steady, rhythmic thump. I straightened, heart ticking faster for reasons I didn't understand yet. The sound grew clearer, closer, then around the bend appeared a chestnut horse, tall, glossy, moving with slow confidence. And on its back a man. A cowboy. The kind of cowboy you expect to see in a movie, not real life. Broad shoulders, worn boots, posture balanced and easy in the saddle. His hat shaded most of his face, but I could see a strong jaw, stubble catching the fading light, and a steady sort of calm in the way he held the reins. He guided the horse toward me with an unhurried grace, like he had all the time in the world to figure out what kind of person had broken down on his road. "You all right there?" he called as he came closer, his voice low, warm, edged with an accent that somehow made everything sound gentler. "I've been better," I admitted, rubbing the back of my neck. "Truck died on me. No cell signal. Didn't exactly plan on camping out here tonight." He pulled the horse to a stop beside me. Being this close, I could see more, the soft brown of his eyes, the sun-darkened skin, the quiet way he studied me like he was making sure I wasn't hurt. "You're lucky I came by before dark." He tipped his hat back to get a better look at the truck. "Nearest mechanics closed for the night. Only opens again in the morning." "Great," I said with a laugh that sounded hollow even to me. He looked back at me, really looked, and for a second the space between us tightened in a way I couldn't name. Something about his gaze held longer than it needed to. Maybe curiosity. Maybe concern. Or maybe something else entirely, something I wasn't ready to admit I noticed. "You headed anywhere important?" he asked. "Just trying to make it to Amarillo before midnight." "You won't," he said with a small, almost apologetic smile. "Not with that truck." I tried not to stare at the curve of that smile. I failed. "I can give you a place to stay," he said after a beat. "My ranch is about a mile up the road. Not fancy, but it's warm and you won't be sleeping with the coyotes." I hesitated, not because I didn't trust him, but because something about him made me nervous in a way I didn't understand yet. A way that made my chest feel too tight, my thoughts too loud. "You sure?" He nodded once, firm but kind. "Wouldn't offer if I wasn't." I looked at the empty road, the dying light, the useless truck, and then at him, this stranger on horseback who somehow didn't feel like a threat. More like something else. "All right," I said. "Yeah. Thanks." He adjusted his position in the saddle and extended a hand down to me. "You can ride behind me. Name's Colton." His hand was rough, warm, steady. When I placed mine in his, something flared low in my stomach, quick, confusing, unwelcome, familiar. He pulled me up behind him with surprising ease. I settled onto the saddle, trying to find a way to sit that didn't feel too intimate, which was impossible because the horse was wide, and he was right there, solid and close. "Put your hands around my waist," Colton said, glancing back. "Otherwise you'll fall when he starts trotting." He didn't say it teasingly. Just matter of fact. Still my pulse jumped. I wrapped my arms lightly around him, unsure how tight to hold. "That's fine," he murmured, and somehow those two words felt too warm in my ear. The horse started moving and that forced me closer, my chest brushing his back, my knee against his. Every bump in the road shifted us together. I could feel the heat of him, steady and grounding, and I tried not to focus on how natural it felt to lean into him when the horse descended a small dip. The ride wasn't long, but it felt suspended, like the world had narrowed to just the two of us and the sound of hooves on dirt. Neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward though. It was charged. Quiet in a way that made me aware of every breath, every slight movement, every inch of space, or lack of space between us. When the ranch finally came into view, dusk settling over the barn and the long stretch of pasture, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Colton slowed the horse, then dismounted, offering his hand again. I took it, and the moment my boots hit the ground we ended up standing closer than two strangers usually do. "Thanks," I said softly. He nodded, eyes lingering on mine before flicking away. "Let's get you settled." Something in the air between us stretched, thin and humming, like a thread pulled tight but not ready to snap. I couldn't tell if he felt it too, but he didn't take a step back right away. Neither did I. A beat passed. Then another. And in that warm, quiet pause, with the sky darkening behind him and the smell of horse and hay surrounding us, I realized I wasn't thinking about my broken truck anymore. Just him, this cowboy who appeared out of nowhere and looked at me like I wasn't a stranger at all. He finally broke the silence with a soft, almost shy, "Come on." But the moment stayed behind, hanging in the air long after we walked toward the house. A feeling I couldn't name yet, but couldn't ignore either. The inside of Colton's ranch house felt warmer than I expected, not just in temperature but in the way spaces sometimes hold the personality of the person who lives there. Soft lamplight glowed across wooden walls and shelves full of framed photos, old rodeo buckles and worn paperback novels. It smelled like cedar, laundry soap, and the faintest trace of hay lingering in his clothes. Something about it felt lived in and steady, like him. "Make yourself at home," he said as he set his hat by the door. "Sorry for the mess. Wasn't expecting company." "Trust me," I said, brushing dust from my jeans, "you should see my apartment." He chuckled, low and warm, and I caught the way he glanced at me, quick, almost assessing, as if he wanted to say something but didn't. That glance stuck to me like a burr. He walked toward a narrow hallway, motioning for me to follow. "The guest room's this way. Bed's clean, but, I didn't make it up today." "No worries," I said, stepping behind him. "Didn't know cowboys judged on linen presentation." He laughed again, quieter this time, and it echoed strangely in the tight hallway. When he opened the door to the small room, the lamplight spilled softly across the unmade bed, rumpled sheets, a folded quilt at the edge, a window cracked just enough to let in the night breeze. It felt embarrassingly intimate even though it was just a room. "I'll grab you a towel," he said. "Bathroom's across the hall if you want to clean up. You look like you've been fighting that road for hours." I didn't think I looked that bad, but maybe I did. My hair was wind-tossed, my shirt clinging in places it shouldn't. "Thanks," I said. "Really? For all of this?" He paused in the doorway, that same unreadable expression flickering across his face. "You don't have to thank me. Would have felt wrong leaving you out there." His voice dipped slightly, gentler, softer, and I felt heat crawl up my neck for reasons I couldn't pretend were just gratitude. He disappeared to find the towel, and I let out a breath, sinking onto the edge of the bed. My heart hadn't slowed since the moment I first climbed onto his horse. When he came back, he didn't knock. He just stepped in holding the towel, then froze slightly when he saw me sitting there. Something tense flickered between us. His breath hitched almost imperceptibly before he masked it. "There's soap in the shower," he said, offering the towel. His fingers brushed mine when I took it. That small, accidental contact felt like more than it should. "Thanks," I murmured, and his eyes dipped to my hand for half a second before he stepped back. I showered quickly, letting warm water rinse away the dust and anxiety. But even then, I couldn't shake the image of him standing in the hallway, wide shoulders, steady hands, eyes flickering with something unspoken. When I stepped out, towel around my neck, he was in the hallway again. This time he was pulling off his shirt. I stopped mid-step. Not because of the sight itself, though he was undeniably built in that quiet, practical way men who work with their bodies tend to be, but because he didn't seem to realize I was there until he turned halfway toward me. His shirt was already over his head. His torso bare. Light from the lamp behind him carved soft shadows across his spine, the subtle taper of his waist, the flex of his shoulders. He froze. I froze. "Oh, sorry," he said, gripping the shirt in one hand. "Didn't hear you come out." My mouth was dry. "No, you're fine. I just didn't expect." He waited for me to finish, but I didn't. I couldn't. Something in his posture shifted, like he almost straightened, almost braced, almost expected something from me. Then he looked away, turning slightly as he pulled on a clean tee. "Long day," he said, voice softer. Didn't realize how much grit I had on me. I nodded even though he couldn't see it. Long day for both of us. He didn't say anything to that. Instead he stepped closer, reaching past me to grab something from the shelf behind me, and the air between us tightened again. He smelled faintly of sweat and cedar and something warm that made the back of my throat feel tight. "Hope the water wasn't too cold," he said, almost too quietly. It was perfect. His eyes lifted to mine, slow, deliberate, almost searching. And for one wild second I wondered if he felt it too, this strange, expanding quiet between us. He broke the moment first, exhaling. "I'm gonna make some coffee. Or tea. Or something. If you want any." "Coffee sounds good." He nodded and stepped into the kitchen. I followed, leaving a few steps of space between us, though it still felt like he filled the whole room. He leaned against the counter while the machine sputtered to life. "You always pick up stranded strangers?" I asked lightly. His lips quirked. "Only the ones who look lost." I swallowed harder than necessary. I wasn't that lost. "No," he said, glancing sideways at me. "But you looked like you needed someone." I didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know how to answer it without giving something away. The coffee finished and he handed me a mug. Our fingers brushed again. Too many times now to call coincidence. We drank in silence for a moment, leaning on opposite sides of the counter like the space between us was holding something fragile and unnamed. "Colton?" I finally said. You didn't have to go out of your way to help me." He looked down at his mug, then back at me with a softness that felt disarming. Maybe I wanted to. There it was again, that unspoken edge, that quiet heat tucked behind his words. Something hovered in his eyes before he blinked it away. Neither of us said anything. But the silence between us wasn't empty. It was crowded, with things I didn't know how to ask and things he didn't know how to explain. He finally pushed off the counter, clearing his throat. "You should get some sleep. Long day tomorrow." "Yeah," I said, even though I didn't want this moment to end. He walked me back to the guest room, stopping in the doorway as if unsure how close he should stand. His hand lifted, just a little, as if he meant to touch my shoulder, then he let it fall. "Good night," he said softly. "Night." He stepped away, but something lingered. A weight, a warmth. A question neither of us had the courage to voice. And as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling in the dim lamplight, one thought repeated itself over and over. Whatever this was between us, it wasn't just in my head. Not anymore. The storm announced itself before it arrived. First as a low rumble far off over the fields, then as a sudden gust of wind that rattled the kitchen window behind me. I paused mid-sip of water, listening. The air had changed, thickened. A moment later, thunder cracked sharply enough to make the light fixture tremble. I left the glass in the sink and stepped into the hallway, intending to check on the window in the guest room. That was when the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then died completely, swallowing the house in a darkness so sudden I stopped breathing. For a second I just stood there, letting my eyes adjust to the sliver of moonlight leaking through the windows. The rain began to hit the roof in heavy sheets, fast, relentless. "Colton?" I called. My voice sounded strangely small against the storm. "In here," he answered from the living room, his voice warm despite the darkness. "Hold on, I've got a lantern." I followed the sound, careful with my steps. When I rounded the corner, a soft golden glow bloomed beside the fireplace as he struck a match and lit the lantern. The warm light spilled upward, catching the shape of his face, the curve of his throat, the strong line of his shoulders. He looked up at me, eyes reflecting the flame, and in that moment everything inside me stuttered. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded, though the truth was my pulse had jumped for reasons that had nothing to do with the storm. Just didn't expect the house to go pitch black like that. "Happens out here," he said, tilting the lantern slightly. "Old wiring. Storms knock it out easy." He stepped closer to hand me the lantern, but when he did, the house gave a violent shudder from the thunder overhead. I flinched without meaning to. His hand landed lightly on my arm, steady, warm, grounding. And he didn't pull it away. Not right away. That small pressure, his thumb instinctively brushing the inside of my elbow, sent something through me that froze every other thought. The warmth of his palm anchored me in the dark, and for a moment, neither of us moved. "You're cold?" he murmured. Not a question, an observation. I wasn't sure if I was or if it just felt that way because he was close, because the lantern light made shadows dance across his jaw, because the storm outside felt secondary to the one building quietly inside me. "Let's get a fire going," he said, his voice softer than before. Only then did he drop his hand, lingering half a second longer than he needed to. He knelt by the hearth, striking another match. I stood beside him holding the lantern, the warmth of the flame brushing along both our faces. The matchlight illuminated the faint hesitation in his eyes, the kind people try to hide but sometimes fail to. The fire caught quickly, crackling to life, filling the room with a golden hum. I sank onto the couch, the cushions dipping slightly under my weight. Colton joined me a moment later, sitting close enough that our knees nearly touched. Not touching but close. Close enough that I felt his presence like a heat. For a few minutes we didn't speak. We just listened to the rain pounding the roof and the fire popping softly in front of us. "You ever seen a storm this strong?" he asked finally, voice low. "Not like this," I admitted. "Feels like the whole world's shaking." He looked at me, not at the fire, not at the storm, at me. "It'll pass," he said gently. I swallowed, feeling the weight of those words settle deeper than they should have. Something about the way he said them, steady, sure, made me feel strangely safe. Words weren't the only thing he was offering. After a while my eyelids began to feel heavy. Warmth cocooned the room, and the sound of rain became almost soothing. I shifted slightly, trying to sit up straighter. When I did, a shiver ran through me, not cold, just something like fatigue. "You tired?" he asked. "Maybe a little." "Long day," he murmured. I nodded, letting my head fall back against the cushion. My eyes drifted shut for a moment. When I opened them again, I saw him watching me with an expression I couldn't immediately read. Something soft, almost contemplative. Before I could say anything, he reached behind him, pulled a blanket from the back of the couch, and draped it over my shoulders. His hands lingered. Just a second too long. Long enough for my breath to catch. The world slowed to a syrupy stillness, the crackle of the fire, the thunder rolling farther away, the weight of the blanket warming my chest. And him, standing just beside me, his face inches from mine, lit by the soft fireglow. "Didn't want you getting cold," he said. But his voice was quieter than before. Uncertain. Almost tender. I should have looked away. Or thanked him. Or pretended I didn't notice the tremble in my own breathing. Instead, I watched him lower himself back onto the couch beside me, closer this time. Our shoulders grazed, barely, but neither of us moved. He rested an arm along the back of the couch, a casual gesture that didn't feel casual at all. The warmth of him seeped through the blanket, through my sleeves, through my skin. Then our hands brushed. Just the backs of our fingers. An accident. Probably. But he didn't pull away. And I didn't either. It was the kind of touch that didn't demand attention but still captured it completely. A soft, hesitant press of skin against skin, charged with something neither of us had the courage to name. The fire crackled. The storm softened. And the world seemed to hold its breath. I don't know how long we sat like that, minutes or hours. Time felt suspended, like the house itself was waiting for one of us to move, to speak, to break the delicate stillness. But neither of us did. Not yet. All I knew was that something had shifted, quietly, irrevocably, between the flicker of the lantern and the warmth of his hand against mine. A moment that froze me, in a way I didn't want to thaw from. A moment I knew I wouldn't forget. I don't know what woke me first, the fire settling into soft embers, or the quiet sound of Colton shifting beside me. The storm had faded into nothing but a distant rumble, a leftover shiver in the sky, but inside the ranch house the air felt more charged than it had at any point that night. I blinked slowly, realizing my head had tilted slightly toward him while I drifted. Our hands still rested close, not quite touching anymore but close enough that I remembered the warmth of where they had been. He was staring into the fire, jaw tight, shoulders tense in a way that felt new, like he was bracing against something inside himself more than anything outside. The lantern on the table had burned low, leaving his profile lit only by the dim amber glow of the dying flames. "You okay?" I asked softly. His breath caught. Barely, but I heard it. He didn't look at me right away. "Yeah," he said. "Just thinking." "About what?" He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck with a rough hand. The gesture was small, but it somehow made him feel more real, more human, more vulnerable. "Tonight," he said eventually. "All of it." I shifted under the blanket, studying him. "It's been a lot." He let out a breath that didn't quite become a laugh. That's one way to put it. The silence that followed wasn't like the ones before. This one was heavier, not in a painful way but in a way that felt like the world was narrowing down to just one question neither of us had dared to voice. I sat up a little straighter. "Colton, did I do something wrong?" He turned sharply, finally meeting my eyes. His expression flickered with something like alarm. "No. No, not at all." "Then what is it?" I asked, heart growing louder in my ears. "You look like you're trying to talk yourself out of something." His throat bobbed with a swallow. He shifted his weight on the couch, turning even more toward me. "Maybe I am," he murmured. I waited, for words, for explanations, for anything, but he didn't continue. He looked away again, jaw tightening like the truth was caught between his teeth. The fire popped, sending a spark upward, and he flinched just slightly at the sound. He was usually so composed, so steady. Seeing him unsettled stirred something deep in me, concern, curiosity, but also a fragile hope. "Hey," I said quietly. "You can tell me?" He didn't answer. Not with words. He shifted closer, so close our knees touched this time, deliberate, not accidental. The contact was soft but unmistakable. My breath stalled in my chest. When he finally spoke, his voice was low enough that I had to lean in to hear it. "I'm not good at saying things straight." "Try," I whispered. He looked at me like he was searching for something. Permission, maybe? Courage? A sign I wouldn't run if he said the wrong thing. "I don't usually have people here," he said. "Not overnight. Not like this. I'm guessing you don't usually rescue strangers from dark roads either." He huffed a small breath. "No. Not usually." "Then why me?" He stared at his hands, turning them slightly as if trying to make sense of what they'd done earlier, touching me, lingering. "I don't know," he said. "That's the part that's messing with me." Messing with him. Because of me. Something warm and terrifying blossomed in my chest. I leaned a little closer, careful, slow. "Colton." He looked up, and for the first time all night he didn't look guarded. He looked open, achingly open. His voice broke just a little when he spoke again. "When you grabbed onto me on the horse, when you held on like that," he swallowed, eyes flicking down. "I liked it. More than I should have." My heart lurched. I opened my mouth, closed it, then found my voice again. "I liked it too." A tiny sound escaped him, half exhale, half disbelief. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing a small line in front of the fireplace before stopping and facing me again. "I kept telling myself I imagined the way you looked at me. The way you kept noticing everything I did." "I wasn't imagining," I said softly. His shoulders slumped, almost with relief. "That's what scares me." I frowned. "Why?" He hesitated, then slowly sank back down beside me, closer than before. Our thighs pressed together fully now, heat pooling in the air between us. "Because I don't want to mess this up," he whispered. "Whatever this is." My pulse hammered so loudly I felt it in my fingertips. "This?" I asked, barely breathing the word. He nodded once. "This." I swallowed hard. "Colton. I don't know what this is either. But I feel it. I've been trying not to, but I do." His eyes softened, warm, startled, almost hopeful. "You do?" I nodded. "Yeah. I really do." Everything froze. Not like fear, but like the moment before something breaks open. He shifted even closer, gently taking the edge of the blanket and pulling it over both of us. The gesture shouldn't have felt intimate, but it did, like he was saying without words that he wanted me near, wanted to share warmth, share the moment. His fingers brushed my cheek then, hesitant, reverent. "Can I?" he whispered. He didn't finish the question. He didn't have to. I leaned into his hand, answering for him. His breath hitched, a trembling inhale that told me he'd been holding this back longer than I realized. His thumb traced the curve of my jaw, slow and tentative. "You make me nervous," he murmured. I let out a shaky breath. "You make me something I don't have a name for yet." A small smile tugged at his lips, fragile, uncertain, but real. He inched forward until our foreheads nearly touched, his breath warm across my skin. "If you don't want this," he whispered, "tell me now. I'll stop." I closed the last inch of space between us, letting my forehead rest against his. "What if I said I do want this?" He froze, not out of fear but out of shock. Out of relief. "I wouldn't believe you," he breathed. "Believe me anyway." His hand moved from my jaw to the back of my neck, fingers threading lightly through my hair. He didn't pull me in, he just held me there, close enough to feel the tremble in his hand, the question hanging between us like a fragile bridge. I lifted my own hand to his chest, feeling the slow, steady thrum beneath my palm. His breath stilled. "Colton," I whispered. "It's okay." And then, finally, he leaned in. Slow, careful, as if giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. Our lips brushed, just barely, a soft, trembling contact that felt more like a confession than a kiss. A promise. A beginning. His hand tightened slightly at the back of my neck, enough to steady us both. He pulled back first, only an inch, eyes searching mine with almost childlike fear. "You're sure?" I nodded, breath catching. "I'm sure." He rested his forehead against mine again, closing his eyes. "God," he whispered, "I've wanted to hear you say that all night." The fire crackled softly behind us, the storm finally silent outside, but inside, between us, something new had begun to burn, warm and fragile and impossibly real. I let my fingertips trace the edge of his collar, feeling the warmth of his skin, the rise and fall of his breath as he tried to steady himself. "Where does this go?" he asked quietly. He wasn't challenging me, he was afraid of the answer. I don't know, I whispered. But for the first time in a long time, I want to find out. His eyes met mine and the softness there was almost overwhelming. Then stay close, he breathed. Just stay. So I did. We sat together on that couch, the blanket wrapped around us, the fire dimming to embers and the space between us finally, unbroken. And for the first time since I met him, I felt something like yes rising inside me, and finding its place. For a long moment after the kiss we didn't move. Not because either of us froze exactly, but because something in the air settled, shifted. Like the atmosphere in the room had finally exhaled after holding its breath through the entire storm. Colton's thumb traced the side of my neck once, a small involuntary motion, and then he let his hand fall gently back to his lap. Not pulling away, just grounding himself maybe, or grounding us. He watched me as though afraid I might vanish if he blinked. Outside, the wind had quieted to nothing. The house felt impossibly still. I swallowed. So, brilliant really. Shakespearean eloquence. He huffed a soft laugh, leaning back against the couch. Yeah, same. He rubbed the back of his neck. I haven't exactly figured out the part after the dramatic confession. My smile came without effort. Me neither. The fire was nothing but glowing coals, faint and warm. In the dim light, Colton's features were softer, less severe than they usually were in daylight. His usual guardedness had dropped, maybe just for now, maybe longer. I didn't know. But I liked this version of him, the one who let the edges show. He cleared his throat. I should probably say something smart here. Something that makes this less confusing. Who says it has to be confusing? I asked quietly. He gave me a look that was both skeptical and gentle. Because we barely know each other. Because tonight was crazy. Because everything about this should feel too fast. He paused. And because I don't usually do this. I tucked one leg underneath me, turning toward him. Do what? Let someone in. The words left him like an admission pulled from somewhere deep. For all his quiet strength, for all the competence and the calm and the steady ways he held himself, this part of him felt raw, open, unprotected. It made me want to be careful with him. I get that, I said softly. His eyes flicked to mine. Yeah. I nodded. I don't do this often either. I don't let myself want things. A short breath left me. Especially things that feel good. His expression softened further, if that was even possible. Then maybe, he said slowly, that's why tonight feels different. My breath caught. Different how? He shifted closer again, not touching me yet, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. Like maybe it's allowed to matter. The words hit something deep inside me. For so long, everything in my life had felt temporary, precarious, like I was waiting for the next wrong turn. But here, in the quiet aftermath of the storm, with him looking at me like I was something worth steadying, something worth choosing, it felt different. No, terrifying. But also, right. I took a breath. Okay. Then if it matters. I hesitated, trying to line up my thoughts. Where do we go from here? He froze, the question hanging between us. Then he smiled, small, real, a little crooked. You're asking me like I actually know. Well, you're the one who lives out here in the middle of nowhere, I teased softly. You're supposed to have all the rugged, quiet wisdom answers. He laughed, low and warm. I can build a fence and break a horse, sweetheart. I'm not sure that qualifies me for relationship planning. Sweetheart. The word hit me like a soft, unexpected touch. I didn't let it show too much, but something fluttered in my chest. Okay, I said slowly, then let's start simple. No big future plans. No labels. Just, I glanced toward his hand close to mine. What do you want next? Right now. His gaze followed mine, down to our hands barely an inch apart. He lifted his fingers, hesitated, then let them settle lightly over mine. Not a tight hold. Just contact. Just intention. I want to know you, he said quietly. Not just the part one met tonight. All of you. And I want, he swallowed once. I want you to want that too. I do. The answer came too quickly, but I didn't regret it. His shoulders dropped just a bit, relief loosening the tension in his frame. Then we start there, he murmured. We don't rush it. We don't force it. But we don't pretend it's not real either. I nodded, feeling something inside me settle in place. That sounds good. He tilted his head. Good? I laughed. Really good. His fingers tightened slightly around mine. Then tomorrow, I'll make you breakfast. Real breakfast. None of the instant stuff I gave you earlier. I lifted a brow. You're bribing me with food? It usually works on the horses, he said. Figured it's worth a shot. I nudged his shoulder lightly. Are you calling me a horse? No, he drawled, fighting a smile. If I was, you'd have run off by now. You don't seem the type that scares easily. You think I'm brave? He gave me a look that lingered. Braver than anyone I've met in a long time. That shouldn't have meant as much as it did. The quiet stretched again, but unlike earlier, this one wasn't heavy. It was warm. Easy. A kind of silence that didn't demand anything except being shared. After a moment, I let my head tip gently onto his shoulder. I didn't ask. I just let it happen. He inhaled sharply at the contact, but he didn't move away. Instead, he shifted slightly to make room, adjusting so I fit against him naturally. Outside, the last traces of rain tapped softly along the windows. Inside, the world felt like a warm, small pocket of calm. Colton spoke again, voice low. Whatever this becomes, I want it to be something we both choose. Not just something that happened because the storm forced us together. I lifted my head enough to see his face. Then let's choose it. Tomorrow. The next day. Whenever it still feels right. And if it doesn't? He asked quietly. Then we talk about it, I said. No disappearing. No shutting down. He looked at me like he wasn't used to being offered that kind of certainty. Okay, he whispered. Deal. I settled back against him, feeling the subtle, steady rhythm of his breathing. Feeling his warmth seep through the blanket and into something deeper. Colton? I murmured. Yeah. I'm glad you found me tonight. His hand, still lightly holding mine, tightened just a little. I'm glad you didn't walk away. We didn't kiss again. We didn't need to. Instead, we sat in the fading glow of the fire, wrapped in a blanket that was too small but somehow enough, and let the night reshape itself around the quiet, tentative promise we'd made. We'd figure it out. Together. Where we go from here. We'd choose that one moment at a time. Morning found us slowly. I woke to light, thin, gold-tinted streaks pushing through the gap in the curtains, laying soft stripes across the floorboards. For a moment, I didn't move, not because I was comfortable, but because I couldn't quite place where I was. My body felt heavy, warm, held in a way that didn't match any memory I reached for. Then I felt it. A weight across my waist. A slow, steady breath against the back of my neck. The faint scent of cedar and soap. Colton. The realization wasn't jarring. It didn't send panic shooting through me. If anything, it wrapped around me like a second blanket. Last night's conversations, whispered promises, the kiss, it all washed back in soft waves. I was lying on the couch still, the blanket half slipped down, and Colton had somehow fallen asleep beside me. No, with me. His arm was draped over me in a way that felt quiet and unintentional, like he'd just gravitated toward me in his sleep. But it still meant something. Maybe more than anything we'd said aloud. I let my eyes close again just for a second, listening to him breathe, feeling the gentle rise of his chest against my back. In the stillness of morning, it felt like something new had taken root, small, real, undeniably there. Eventually, Colton stirred. His arm tensed, then loosened as he woke. I felt him lift his head slightly, probably realizing how close we were. Mornin'? He rasped, his voice low and rough with sleep. I turned my head just enough to see him. His hair was a mess, soft, disheveled, falling slightly into his eyes. He blinked at me slowly like he was still catching up to reality. Morning, I whispered. There was a heartbeat of silence, then another. His gaze flicked down, briefly, almost shyly, to where he'd been holding me. Didn't mean to, he cleared his throat. Crowd you. You didn't, I said quickly, feeling the warmth rise to my cheeks. It was nice. His expression shifted, not a full smile, just the ghost of one, but it was enough. Enough to say he heard me. Enough to say he was glad. He sat up, stretching slightly, the blanket sliding off his shoulders. He looked at me with that same quiet, thoughtful attention he'd shown the night before. You sleep okay? I nodded. Better than I expected. Good. He raked a hand through his hair, making it somehow worse. I'll make that breakfast I promised. If the power's still out, I'll improvise. I pushed myself up, the cool air touching the skin where his warmth had been. What does cowboy improvising look like? He smirked. Depends how desperate we get. The mood felt softer now, lighter but still fragile like morning sunlight through thin curtains. As he moved around the kitchen, his steps familiar and methodical, I watched him with a new kind of awareness. Not the nervous, electric awareness from before. This one was gentler. Steadier. Every so often he glanced at me, Small, almost accidental looks that held more than he said. I liked it. After a few minutes he handed me a mug. The coffee was strong, a little burnt, but warm. I wrapped my hands around it and leaned against the counter. He leaned beside me, close enough that our elbows brushed. I was thinking, he said quietly, about what you asked last night. Where do we go from here? I murmured. He nodded. That. I took a slow sip of coffee, waiting, not pushing. Colton exhaled softly, eyes on the window as if searching the fields for answers. Last night didn't feel accidental, or like some storm made us do it thing. He paused. It felt like something I'd been trying not to see for a while. My heart lifted. Yeah, I said. Me too. He shifted, turning toward me more fully. I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. And I don't want to act like it doesn't matter. But. He hesitated. But, I echoed gently. But I want to take it slow. Not because I'm unsure, he added quickly, meeting my eyes. But because I want to do it right. I don't want confusion or fear to run this thing. I nodded. I don't want that either. Another small silence settled between us, comfortable this time. He nudged the side of my hand with his fingers. Good. That tiny touch, barely anything, just a soft brush, still sent a warmth through me that reached all the way to my throat. Colton? I asked quietly. Yeah. I don't need everything to make sense right away. I'm just glad we're not pretending anymore. His eyes softened. Yeah. Me too. After breakfast, simple eggs cooked on a cast-iron pan he set on top of the old wood stove, we stepped outside. The storm had washed the world clean. The air smelled like wet earth and pine, and the sky stretched wide and bright, a soft blue after the chaos of the night before. Colton walked a little ahead on the gravel path, boots crunching quietly, then slowed until we were side by side. I could feel him thinking about something before he said it. You know, he murmured, there's this thing horses do when they trust you. They lean in. Just a little. Barely noticeable. But it's their way of saying they're with you. I glanced at him. Are you comparing yourself to your horses now? He gave a half smile. Maybe. So which part of that analogy is me? His shoulder brushed mine, soft and intentional. The part they leaned toward. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. I leaned back, just enough for him to feel it, just enough to say I'm here too. The tension in his posture eased so subtly I might have missed it if I wasn't watching for it. We walked like that, side by side, brushing occasionally, letting the quiet fill itself. There was no urgency, no need to define anything more than this moment. Something real didn't need rushing. When we reached the corral fence, he rested his arms on the top rail. I stood beside him, the wind shifting his hair, carrying the faint scent of hay and sunlight. Colton? I said softly. Last night, the kiss. Did it scare you? He didn't answer right away. Finally he said, yeah. Me too. But, he added, turning toward me, it also felt right. He looked away again, but this time only for a moment. When he looked back, his voice was quieter than the wind. If you wanted to, I wouldn't mind another. Not a request. Not pressure. An invitation. I stepped closer, just an inch. He noticed. His breath caught. I think, my voice wavered, but I didn't back away. I think I'd like that. We didn't kiss immediately. Instead we stood there, letting the moment build gently between us, letting the world slow the way it had the night before. His eyes searched mine, asking without words, is this real? Are we choosing this? I answered the same way, quietly, simply, by lifting my hand and letting my fingers rest against the side of his jaw. He leaned into the touch just a little. Just enough. And then, soft, careful, deliberate, he kissed me. It wasn't like the night before. That had been electricity. This was warmth. Light. A beginning. Something real taking its first breath. When we finally separated, he pressed his forehead lightly to mine, laughing under his breath as if stunned by the simplicity of it. So, he murmured, I guess this is us, starting? Yeah, I whispered. I think it is. And in the quiet morning light, with his hand finding mine and our breaths still mingling, something new and steady settled inside my chest, like a promise made not in words, but in the gentle way he held on. Whatever comes next, we'll choose it. Together.